Cleopatra was born into a palace overflowing with gold, titles, and ceremony. Yet from the beginning, she sensed a quiet contradiction because abundance did not guarantee belonging, and power could feel lonelier than obscurity when every gaze carried expectation instead of understanding. While others assumed privilege meant ease, she learned early that being watched constantly required careful shaping of voice, expression, and silence, which slowly trained her to observe before revealing herself. In crowded halls where voices overlapped like river currents, she often felt oddly separate, noticing how language, tone, and intention mattered more than volume or rank. Her childhood unfolded between marble columns and whispered schemes, and within that space, she began to feel that safety depended not on walls but on awareness. She listened more than she spoke, absorbing accents, customs, and moods, because each detail offered clues about people's hidden fears and hopes. This habit of attention created an inner world where curiosity grew stronger than comfort, and questions felt more exciting than certainty. Even as she learned she was meant to rule, she wondered what rule truly meant, sensing that authority without connection dissolved into performance. Books and lessons surrounded her, yet she treated them less as rules and more as maps, comparing words on papyrus with expressions she observed in living faces. She noticed how teachers spoke differently depending on audience, and this inconsistency quietly sharpened her awareness of persuasion and truth. When spoken to as a child, she recognized how easily adults underestimated youth, which taught her patience and the strategic value of waiting. Languages fascinated her not as tools of command, but as bridges, because each new tongue revealed how differently the same idea could feel. In moments of solitude, she imagined conversations with unseen listeners, rehearsing explanations, arguments, and questions she was not yet allowed to ask. The palace, though grand, sometimes felt like a stage, and she sensed she was both actor and audience, studying her own role with growing seriousness. She learned that silence could be protective, but also that silence could invite assumptions, forcing her to choose carefully when to speak. Even celebrations carried tension, since laughter often floated above unspoken competition, and she noticed how joy could hide sharp edges. Her sensitivity made her alert to imbalance, prompting her to wonder why some voices were amplified while others faded into background murmurs. She felt empathy develop not from weakness, but from careful observation, which allowed her to predict reactions and avoid needless conflict. As responsibilities crept closer, she measured herself against invisible standards, questioning whether strength meant hardness or flexibility. She began to understand that charm was not decoration but communication, shaped by timing, context, and intent rather than appearance alone. Around her, authority was often inherited, yet she quietly believed influence had to be earned repeatedly through understanding. She studied stories of rulers not to copy them, but to notice how easily admiration transformed into resentment. In her thoughts, leadership resembled navigation more than command, requiring constant adjustment to shifting winds. She became aware that identity could be layered, allowing public roles and private reflections to coexist without canceling each other. This dual awareness helped her move through gatherings with composure, even while internally questioning motives and outcomes. Humor entered her thinking as observation rather than performance, allowing her to see irony without bitterness. She noticed that fear often disguised itself as certainty, a lesson that shaped how she interpreted confident declarations. Her imagination stretched beyond borders, fueled by stories of distant places and unfamiliar customs. She sensed that the world was larger than her city, and that understanding difference could become a form of strength. As a young girl, she felt both protected and constrained by lineage, which sharpened her desire to define herself beyond inherited labels. Moments of vulnerability taught her that adaptability mattered more than rigid pride. She observed how alliances formed quietly through shared interest rather than proclaimed loyalty. Each interaction became a lesson, adding texture to her growing inner map of human behavior. She understood that being underestimated could be useful, offering space to learn unnoticed. Her confidence grew slowly, rooted not in applause but in preparation. The weight of expectation never fully lifted, yet she learned to carry it without surrendering curiosity. She practiced balancing warmth with caution, knowing generosity without awareness could become exposure. Inside, ambition formed gently, intertwined with responsibility rather than hunger alone. She wondered whether ruling required sacrificing parts of herself, or whether integration was possible. These questions lingered as companions rather than burdens, shaping patience and restraint. As youth softened into readiness, she felt awareness sharpening rather than fading. Her inner dialogue matured, allowing doubt and resolve to coexist productively. She accepted that belonging might need to be created rather than inherited. The palace corridors no longer felt merely vast, but filled with signals awaiting interpretation. Her sensitivity, once confusing, now seemed essential. She sensed that future challenges would demand both intellect and empathy, not one alone. Standing at the edge of greater responsibility, she felt neither fully prepared nor afraid, because becoming herself had already begun. As her awareness matured, she began testing her voice in careful ways, choosing moments when a quiet comment could shift attention, and discovering that influence often entered rooms softly, like light sliding across stone before anyone noticed the change. She watched elders argue with rehearsed certainty, while sensing gaps between their words, and this taught her that confidence could be performed, whereas understanding required patience, listening, and an ability to hold uncertainty without rushing toward applause. Crowds no longer overwhelmed her, because she learned to read collective moods as patterns, noticing how fear spread faster than hope, yet could be slowed by calm presence and a well-timed question that redirected attention. Her inner world grew more complex, layered with memory and foresight, allowing her to imagine consequences before actions, and to feel responsibility not as weight alone, but as a strange invitation to shape outcomes gently. She practiced composure like a language, adjusting posture, tone, and expression while remaining inwardly flexible, which helped her move through tense encounters without surrendering curiosity or empathy. Moments of doubt still arrived, especially when loyalty appeared conditional, yet she recognized that uncertainty sharpened awareness, preventing comfort from dulling perception or reducing people to simple categories. She sensed how power flowed around official titles, often gathering near personalities rather than positions, and this observation guided her toward cultivating presence instead of demanding recognition. Writing became a private refuge, where thoughts could unfold without interruption, allowing her to explore questions she could not yet voice aloud. Through reflection, she learned that timing mattered as much as truth, because even wise words could fail if offered before listeners were ready. She observed how humor eased tension, not through mockery, but through shared perspective, and she stored these insights carefully for moments when pressure threatened to fracture dialogue. As responsibilities expanded, she noticed how quickly expectations hardened into assumptions, encouraging her to remain adaptable rather than trapped within projected roles. Her sensitivity to atmosphere allowed her to anticipate shifts, preparing responses before conflicts fully surfaced. She understood that alliances required maintenance, attention, and respect, rather than grand declarations that faded under strain. Instead of resisting scrutiny, she studied it, learning how attention could be guided rather than fought. She practiced balancing openness with discretion, understanding that visibility carried both opportunity and risk. Her curiosity extended beyond immediate concerns, reaching toward history, geography, and belief, which helped her see present tensions as part of longer patterns. By connecting past narratives to present moments, she gained perspective that softened urgency without weakening resolve. She recognized that compassion did not contradict strength, but refined it, enabling decisions that considered consequences beyond immediate victory. Quiet confidence replaced earlier hesitation, rooted in preparation rather than certainty of outcome. She observed how fear narrowed thinking, while patience expanded it, and she consciously chose the latter whenever possible. Her internal questions evolved, focusing less on approval and more on coherence between values and action. She noticed that true listening often unsettled speakers, yet revealed pathways hidden behind rehearsed positions. As she navigated layered relationships, she learned that trust developed gradually through consistency rather than dramatic gestures. She became comfortable holding complexity, resisting simple answers when situations demanded nuance. Her sense of belonging shifted inward, anchored to self-understanding instead of external validation. She accepted that misinterpretation was inevitable, choosing to respond with clarity rather than defensiveness. The pressure of expectation sharpened her discipline, encouraging thoughtful preparation before visible movement. She learned to frame decisions as processes rather than conclusions, allowing adjustment as circumstances evolved. Observation remained her quiet strength, turning silence into strategy without bitterness. She felt ambition refine itself, guided by purpose rather than impulse. Through careful presence, she discovered that leadership often began long before authority was formally granted. She allowed herself moments of rest, understanding that constant vigilance dulled insight. Reflection helped her integrate ambition with responsibility, preventing either from overwhelming the other. She sensed that the future would test these skills simultaneously, demanding balance under scrutiny. Rather than fearing that test, she approached it with attentive curiosity. The environment around her felt increasingly legible, as if patterns once hidden now emerged through experience. She trusted preparation over prediction, knowing certainty was rare. Her awareness expanded beyond self, encompassing the delicate interplay of people, timing, and intention. She understood that visibility would increase, and with it, misunderstanding. Yet she chose steadiness, believing coherence would speak louder than explanation alone. Her internal compass steadied, shaped by observation, empathy, and restraint. The stage ahead felt larger, but also more familiar. She sensed continuity between who she had been and who she was becoming. Rather than seeking transformation, she embraced refinement. The silence before action no longer felt empty, but charged with potential. Her readiness was quiet, deliberate, and incomplete in the best way. Standing within unfolding possibility, she remained attentive, knowing that awareness itself would guide the next step.